Thank you, Chair Carter, for holding this important hearing to discuss the Environmental Protection Agency's rule on the risk management program. I also want to thank the witnesses for being here to testify on the implications of this rule. During this administration, we've seen an aggressive rules coming out of the EPA that continue to hamstring several industries, especially those that deliver critical products for modern-day life. The Biden administration is yet again pushing a rule with onerous requirements for critical industries here in the U.S. I believe safety is paramount, but this rule does not consider what the covered industries under RMP are doing to ensure safety and mitigate risk. I come from the business world. I am far too familiar with burdensome regulations that have high compliance costs, which will ultimately be passed on to the consumer and makes us not competitive globally. This rule also has serious national security issues with the information sharing requirement, which I will get into. Additionally, in my district, there is a Hawkins water treatment facility that would be subject to this rule, and I'm glad to have Mr. Erstead here to discuss what this would do not only to this facility, but facilities across the industry. Mr. Erstead, in your opinion, how could the enhanced information disclosure be counterproductive to safety, especially at facilities such as agricultural retailers that only have 3 to 5 employees?
Well, I think that the information, we kind of talked about some of the challenges with knowing who to give the information to. I don't know a lot about the smaller ag retail facilities, but I did grow up in a small town in South Dakota, 380 people. I know people who are in that industry, and I know folks who, they're well-meaning, but there isn't exactly a staff to implement PSM projects.
Are EPA tools and guidelines for implementing this enhanced information disclosure sufficient to guide regulated facilities in its implementation?
No, I think that they're, for example, the spending significant time within 6 miles of the facility is not defined. What does that mean? How are we supposed to prove it? We have certainly seen bad actors out there trying to get access to information about our facilities. And if we're the ones that are the gate on this, and if we fail, that would be bad for the country and frankly puts the neighbors at risk as well.
In your testimony, you raised valid concerns about the security implications and administrative burdens that the rule's public information sharing requirements would place on regulated facilities, including yours. In your opinion, how could EPA have addressed this issue differently, making sure that communities have the information they need without creating massive administrative burdens and security vulnerabilities?
Well, I guess I go back to, I think that we've already had good relationships with our local first responders who are really the folks who need to know. We already have reporting obligations. We're reporting to the EPA the products that are on site. Information is certainly shared by the folks who we think need to know. There is information out there that's available to the public. I think that the concern is when you're getting into details about what processes we have, what we have implemented, what we have not implemented, and why, that's putting a lot of information potentially in the hands of people who could use it against this country.
In addition to these obvious security concerns with the rules of information sharing requirements, do you anticipate other unintended consequences?
Well, I think anytime you're putting a burden on an industry that is already burdened, and I talk a little bit from the chlorine perspective. The chlorine supply chain has been stressed lately. There have been shortages. I know when COVID hit, we had calls from public health officials across the country wanting to make sure they were going to have a supply of chlorine to be able to treat the water. We were able to get through that. There have been other shortages of the product, and there have been companies that have gotten out of that business. And if you get enough businesses out of that business, the supply will go down or be affected. That is a public health issue, and obviously any regulatory costs do get passed on to our customers and eventually on to the consumers.
So there would be severe consequences in health risk. Do you think there's a cost-benefit analysis being done here?
We don't necessarily see that, no.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, and with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.